All right, so pull up the tweet. I'm going to pull it up, too, so I can read it word for word. But this comes from Zach Jackson from The Athletic, and this came out at 11:11 this morning, so while we were on air. Quote from Zach Jackson, as the Browns go through the process of preparing to make their final summer roster decisions, they've been willing to explore the possibility of trading quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Jason, that's your guy, DTR and Zach Jackson.
Both my guys.
What do you make of this column / article / report / opinion piece from your guy Zach on the Browns potentially listening to trade offers for DTR?
Yeah, I talked to Zach about it. Sorry, I didn't tell you. I forgot. He told me that he was writing this. But would have
been a great topic to know ahead of time. But.
I didn't realize he was writing for today. I didn't know it was that close to
okay.
the finish line. But, yeah, I think that there's been some interest in around the league. We just talked about it yesterday. You got to do something. You're certainly not going to carry 4. You have to do something between Huntley and DTR. I prefer DTR. I think there's something there. I'm not saying he's going to be a 15-year starter in the league, but, I like what I've seen. I think he can make all the throws. Feel like he was starting to figure it out last year. But, one thing that's real, and we mentioned this yesterday, is the ability to sneak. And who's going to be the sneaker? Is it going to be Jameis? Is there a role for Huntley as the third quarterback / a quarterback sneak guy? It's not going to be Deshaun. And we saw last year when they traded Josh Dobbs that they're not afraid to pull the trigger on trading a quarterback if they can find value for him elsewhere. So it's an interesting dilemma of which way do you go, Huntley or DTR. You're going to have to move on one of them. I think that there is trade value with DTR. I think there probably would be trade value with Tyler Huntley as well.
I don't think it's a lot of – I think you get more for DTR because of the fact that he's younger.
And under contract for 3 more years.
Under contract for a couple more years. But I think that when I see that, that's not shocking to me because you got your 2 quarterbacks that you want essentially on the roster. I think even if you cut Tyler Huntley, you could bring him back on P Squad. I don't know how open he would be to that, but it could be a thing. If you cut DTR, somebody's going to claim him immediately. I do think that it is something to the Tyler Huntley thing because you remember about 2 weeks ago, I think it was Mary Kay was on the show. I wasn't here. I was watching it from my phone, and she was talking about they need to find a role for Huntley because they think he is a very good football player. So if you keep him on pre-squad, if he's open to that, or you want to keep him around your organization, there's things that you can do with him more than having DTR just sit there. And for DTR, don't get me wrong, I think everybody in that organization loves DTR. But if I'm DTR, I don't want to spend my entire career being a backup to somebody. I want to, get the possibility of becoming a starter in this league. And if you stay behind Deshaun, no matter what Deshaun do, you're going to be behind Deshaun unless he gets hurt. Like, they're not benching Deshaun for you. That's just not going to happen. So you will want to go somewhere where you can see yourself becoming the starter. Maybe Minnesota for this season, but not overall. But somewhere that's moving off, like a Dallas. If they move off Dak, you'll be the next guy in line. Or you go to Seattle, they move off Geno, you could be the next. Like, those are things that you want. So many times, and it happens to a lot of young guys. I fell for the same thing when I was young. You get to a place as a rookie, and you love the players that's around, and you just want it to work there. But sometimes it's just not going to ever be in the cards for you to be playing there because who's in front of you is so good. It was like me in Seattle. I love Seattle. I never wanted to leave Seattle. But then I talked to Sherman. He was like, what you going to do, be a backup to me for your entire career? And I'm like, no, I actually want to play. Well, you're not going to play over me. You're not going to play over Earl. You're not going to play over Cam. So what are you doing? So it's like, yeah, you do need to leave. Yeah. And I think he's in the same situation to where, don't get me wrong, I would love for him to be the quarterback for the Browns in 3 years or whenever the case may be. But for him, for his sake, he needs to go somewhere where he can get on the field and start playing because I do think he's got a really special talent, and I think if he gets under the right coach that continues to fine-tune him a little bit more, I think he could be a really good quarterback in this league.
Look at the progression of DTR. When the Browns drafted him, he was QB3 last year going into preseason, right? Behind Josh Dobbs and Deshaun Watson. He beats out Dobbs for the QB2 spot in the preseason. They trade Josh to Arizona. He's quarterback 2. Deshaun gets hurt. He gets his chance to play. DTR gets hurt. Played pretty well in that Pittsburgh game. Showed flash in the Denver game in his second start. He beat Pittsburgh Didn't play great. It was a 13-10 win, if I remember correctly. But did enough to win, was playing better against Denver, gets concussed, misses the season. Joe Flacco comes in. We all know what happens after. He comes into his second season, and you want to make progressions. Tyvis, tell me if I'm wrong. You want to go from, third string to backup to eventually starter.
Yes.
Through no fault of his own, he's back from being the backup last year to now the third string quarterback. Like Jameis Winston is the backup to Deshaun Watson. There's no argument about that. And the Browns made a decision that they needed something a little more reliable and a more veteran presence to be the backup to Deshaun, something a little more stable in case he gets hurt again or isn't playing for whatever reason. So they brought in Jameis, and now DTR's back in second. So if DTR said, I want a chance to be the backup quarterback, I can't blame him. To your point, I can't blame him. But I think when the Browns are looking at making this decision between Huntley and DTR, it could come down to purely draft compensation return, or what can you get back for DTR versus Huntley. And I do think while both could be worth something in terms of draft capital, Huntley may be a sixth. Well, DTR could be worth a fifth because of his contract, his age, and the fact that he's still a developing quarterback, unlike Huntley, who you kind of know what you're getting. So if the Browns are going into this looking, we think they're about the same, but we could get more for DTR, it wouldn't shock me if he's the guy who ends up being traded.
If I'm DTR and they about to trade me and they ask me who's the team that I would like to go get traded to, I would pick the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay, Matt Stafford's towards the end. He's from L.A. He got Puka that's going to always be there. Good
Who's their
offense.
backup? Who's the Rams' backup?
Stetson Bennett.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, they signed Jimmy G.
Who they say looks terrible.
Yeah.
And Stetson Bennett is behind them. So he could go there and he'd be better than both of them. He'd be a better option than both of them right now. And if Matthew Stafford, as old as he gets hurt. Yeah. So, you might get forced into action. And you in L.A., that means you're going to play harder because it's L.A. You could be the man.
I do think injuries are a concern with DTR. He had the concussion you mentioned, and then he came in and just took a couple of snaps and got hurt again. Yeah, and it was a pretty serious injury. So, I think that is a valid concern to have. And I also wonder if the Browns would just – obviously they invested more in the backup quarterback spot than they had intended because I believe they drafted DTR believing he was going to be the long-term backup. They saw what happened last year. They pivoted, signed Jameis to a big money deal, but it's only for 1 year. He's only on a 1 year deal. So now do you sort of reset your clock and go back into the draft?
And draft a late quarterback.
And draft another quarterback this year in the 4th, 5th type round as another developmental type of guy and just sort of start that process over again.
Jameis
if that's
Winston's
your plan.
Contract is how long?
1 year.
He's got 1 year. That's it.
They better keep him.
And that's also, I gotta be honest, it surprises me that they would move DTR knowing Jameis is only 1 year. If you move on from Jameis after that 1 year, I'm sure Jameis is looking at this as an opportunity to sort of cleanse himself and maybe get a starter's job next year. The
Gardner Minshew vein.
The Gardner Minshew vein, the guy, the local kid, Trubisky did that. It didn't work out again, but you go be a backup for a year and then you enter back in the water. So then you would have DTR as a third-year guy coming in to be a backup. You still have him for 2 more years under contract. That sounds pretty good to me. But if they do move on from him, if they are able to find value for him and move him, I would expect that they would go back into the draft again next year and start that process over again of trying to find a guy in those mid-rounds.
I'm not a fan of restarting that process.
I'm not either. You got the guy.
How many years Deshaun got left on his contract?
3.
This and 2 more.
Yeah. This and 2
more. And he got 3 years left on his rookie deal.
He's got 3 left on his rookie deal.
So essentially he'd be Jordan Love.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone looks at DTR as the heir apparent to Deshaun.
Well, if that's the case, then he need to go ahead and move. And when 3 years is up, they need to take one in the first round.
Bull and I said yesterday, and I totally if it doesn't work this year for Deshaun, you have to start coming up with an exit strategy.
I agree.
You got 2 years left on the deal. You got to start figuring out how you're going to get. Like this is the make or break year.
But it's so fortunate to say that in this situation that it's a new offensive philosophy. Your offensive line looks wishy-washy. Like, I can see why you could get to the end of the season. I just think for him, he needs to just have some flat. It just need to be some games where he just put a string of games together that makes people believe, like, all right, he is good.
Yeah.
And the first part of that is playing 17 games to begin with. And like I said, no matter where he looks like, you have to just play him for the 17 games and let the whole thing play out, because by the end of this season, you have to have an answer of what you're going to do. If you're going to stick with him, or if you do need to start looking for something
You may be looking for a quarterback a whole lot higher than the mid-rounds.
And to Jason's point, if it doesn't work out with Deshaun, and obviously we all hope it does, but if it doesn't, DTR isn't the next guy up. Like, they would draft somebody in the first round. They would go and try to make another trade in the vein of Deshaun Watson or sign someone. However, you're going to have to acquire somebody.
If that's true, and DTR, you might need to go ahead and request. You might need to go request the trade.
But he was a fifth round pick. Like,
yeah.
His expectations have to be realistic too.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you what, when he was out there, the Baltimore game is a wash.
Yeah, throw that out the window.
Yeah. The other two games,
Pittsburgh and a half of Denver.
Yeah, if he would have been lights out them two games, well, one, Jameis wouldn't even be here, but two, his trade value would be through the roof.
He's got a great arm.
Yeah.
He's got a great arm.
He's got the arm. I mean, like, he threw that
He's
pass.
got the mobility.
That pass, he threw the thrash on that slant. I was looking at that like that's crazy, because that DB was draped all over him, and he just got it through there. Yeah, he just got it through there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a rocket. We talked about his combine numbers. He had the fastest ball ever tracked at the combine when he was coming out of UCLA. He's got more experience than any college quarterback had ever had coming out of the draft. Like, he has the requisites. He's just a little undersized, and to Jason's point, he's dealt with some injuries already in his NFL career that, if you're looking to make him the future pillar of your franchise, would probably give some teams some concern. And he's kind of slight built to begin with, on top of the injury history. So he's a talented player. There's no doubt about that. He's an electric.
Which is crazy.
And I think he could fill in and be a really good backup. Like, I think Bull mentioned yesterday.
As skinny as he is, his arm is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just imagine if he just got on the
Like
protein.
Tim Lincecum or
got
Randy
on the
Johnson.
protein shakes or something.
But I think, like Bull said yesterday, Jason, DTR could be a solid backup in this league for 10, 12 years.
The Colt McCoy plan.
Exactly. But I don't think, and we learned with Colt McCoy's great to have as your QB2. When he becomes QB1, you're probably drafted in the top 10 of the draft the next year. And I'm not saying that's DTR's ceiling, but I don't think any team in the NFL is looking at DTR right now saying, that's a guy we think could lead us to the playoffs as a starting quarterback for 17 games. He's a great guy to fill in for a few games. You could certainly win with DTR, but you're winning with him, not because of him.
No.
Fair?
I mean, we ain't got a lot of data to go off of. Like I say, he looked good in the preseason games when he's out there. Everybody for the Browns love him. Everybody rolled with him when he went in there, and I do think that he's had moments where I was like, man, that's a really good throw. But then there's moments where it's like, what are you doing? But I think that's just being young. For him, it's all mental. You know, once he gets a better understanding of the game and understands that, you know, maybe I can't thread everything, or maybe I need to take a little bit off so my receivers can catch it. Like, I think that will make him very valuable as a quarterback as well. So I think he got all the intangibles to be a good quarterback. I ain't gonna tell you he's gonna be the greatest thing ever, but I think he could be a really good quarterback in this league.